Remember Jurassic Park? Do you remember where the dinosaurs tried to kill everybody? Well, that probably isn't going to happen when we clone stuff, but cloning still does result in a large amount of death. That's why a lot of people are against it. So before I begin with the ethical debate, I'm going to run over some facts about cloning. Cloning is a subject that has piqued human interest since all the way back to the 40s, when people tried to clone frogs and were eventually successful with it. Dolly the sheep eventually made cloning famous in the 90s, where she was internationally publicized. Cloning works by taking cells from an original animal. So say you have your original dog. So you take a cell out of the original dog, and then you implant it into an embryo in a lab. You cultivate and develop that embryo until it reaches a certain point in its developmental stage, and then it's implanted into a surrogate mother. Then that mother would birth that animal as normal, and you have the same dog as what you started with. Now, in theory, it's that easy, but in practice, it's a lot harder. So the debate rages on from all this death. Is it worth it in the end? Between the clones, the surrogate mothers, and those are the real two. So let's get into it. So a non-profit called Understanding Animal Research, that's based in the UK, did research and wrote a very good article about cloning. So if you remember Dolly, which I just said 30 seconds ago, and you've probably heard her name before, Dolly was actually the 276th attempt. The previous 275 attempts were unsuccessful. Of those 276 attempts, there were only 29 embryos that actually successfully developed at all, and only 13 made it to the point where they could be implanted in surrogate mothers. Of those 13, the only one that was successful was Dolly. Even with Dolly's success, she died at age 6, which is about half of the actual lifespan of such a sheep. Another article from Smithsonian Magazine tells of a story from a doctor whose name I'm going to absolutely butcher, Che Myung Jae Ko, who is a professor at the University of Illinois. So a man called Ko and his team asking if they were able to clone a dog, because his dog had just died and he couldn't bear with parting with his beloved dog, which I understand. I love my dog. If it was ethical, I would probably consider cloning him. I'll get to that later. So the reason Ko is so qualified was he actually advised a team in 2005 that had cloned 2 dogs. So they were twins. So the first one unfortunately died of pneumonia at a very early age, like very soon after being born. It was within a few weeks. The second one did go on and live for 10 years. So it sounds like it was actually a pretty successful attempt, right? Wrong. So Snuppy was the name of the one that survived and lived 10 years. Him and his twin were 2 of 3 successful attempts. Those 3 successful attempts were out of 1,000 embryos that were implanted into 123 different surrogates. So out of over 1,000 attempts, there were 3 successful actual clones, and only one of them lived on. So ultimately, the man who called Ko backed out because it would have been very expensive, and he decided that it was not worth it. So, given the death and everything that surrounds it, I'm going to go over some of the main grievances of cloning. So the first one is the actual welfare of the clones. So as demonstrated by the Dolly and Snuppy experiments, there's a lot of death that surrounds these clones, and not a lot of them live at all or live very long. So Dolly's DNA was actually shorter than regular sheep, and that caused complications with her. She developed a very crippling form of arthritis in one of her hind legs and a very large lung tumor, which ultimately killed her. Snuppy died of the exact same cancer that killed the dog that he was cloned from, his quote-unquote father. In addition to this, there's a worry about the health of the surrogates. So a lot of the mothers don't actually survive the process. It can die in childbirth or post-birth. So in addition, there's so many surrogates that are created. Like I said, 123 for Dolly, or Snuppy, excuse me. So if you need 123 dogs for these experiments, where do you get those? And a lot of people would say this would produce these dog farms. And dog farms like that are obviously unethical. And so in addition to these unethical dog farms, you worry about the treatment of all these dogs, the living conditions, and you worry about what happens to the surrogates after they fulfill their purpose. And it's a lot easier to say we can give homes to hundreds and hundreds of dogs than actually giving these dogs real forever homes. So another worry about the health is the actual neglect of people or the animals that be subject to this. So say you have this one incredible service dog. So the service dog is really intelligent, really good at what it does, and is just bang on with all the assisting and everything. So you clone him, right? So now you have the original incredible service dog, and now you have a clone of the service dog. Everybody wonders what happens with these other service dogs, which are still good. They're just not quite as good as this one incredible dog. So everybody wonders, well, people will get the new dog and they'll get rid of their old dog. And then there will be this huge wealth of dogs that are still pretty good or not great, and they'll just be neglected and replaced with a really good dog. So a lot of people would say, no, this wouldn't happen, but we just don't know because we don't have any evidence for either one. But that is a very key concern. So ultimately, a paper from the United States National Library of Medicine that was written by 4 Canadian doctors said in their conclusion, theriogenologists and veterinary clinicians need to better understand the medical problems associated with cloned animals in order to develop more effective treatments to reduce pregnancy loss and neonatal morbidity and mortality levels. In English, that just means that before we can actually really even consider cloning as a mainstream scientific practice, we have to understand why do so many animals die for this and how can we prevent that. So, in conclusion, there's 3 really paths you can take with cloning. It's yes, no, or maybe, like in everything. So there's the yes, that cloning is okay. We can start doing it and keep doing it, and we'll figure it out along the way, more so like all other technologies. There's the no, which is saying, no, there's too much death. We don't want to play God. We don't want to do this. We need to stop cold turkey at all. And then there's the maybe group, like the paper said. We need to figure out what's happening, why it's happening, and how we can fix it. And once we do that, we're fine. Personally, I say no. I think it's playing God, and I don't think we should do it. I do support things like stem cell cloning, which takes stem cells from a person and implants it in another person, and those stem cells can grow into what they need, but that's a whole nother topic that needs 2 or 3 speeches, and that's not what we're talking about. So I hope this has helped inform you on your decision about cloning and what you think about it. Thank you.